Yes, Sahanya, my question is about the homework I sent you in the second session of last Saturday. I just happened to tell you to refer the article uploaded to Moodle and just find a template. Can you remember what it? It's all right if you can't remember. Just let me know whether you are you can reflect back, or rather, if it is forgotten, yes, I'll go ahead without worrying about it. Well, actually, it is uploaded to last day's session in the Moodle, but no worries. Okay, don't worry about it. Now, let me share my screen so that you'll be able to understand what I'm talking about, right? Before I do share my screen, let me ask a couple of questions. Yeah. It is actually uploaded, but it's okay. No worries. No worries. Don't worry about it. We can go ahead. Yes. Let me share the OneNote on your screen. Yes. Right. Okay, Sanya. I have a couple of questions. Let me type them out here so that when I type them, or rather when I ask those questions, you'll be able to answer them, right? So the first question is, what kind of texts that you have to refer in university studies? But in higher education, what kind of text you are supposed to refer? Now, in advanced level, if you could remember, you are you were supposed to read texts like school textbooks, yeah, and then you were referring to the tutorials given by your uh, tuition masters, and sometimes you were supposed to read simply books, right? So those are the things that you referred before you come to the university while you were studying for advanced level and the other school texts. But now you are in a different context in university where you have to refer to some other kind of texts. Do you have any idea what are those texts? If you have an idea, you can text it in the chat and tell me what sort of texts that you're supposed to really read in university. Other than textbooks or tutorials, what else you are supposed to read, Buddha? I think this was a concern in our first couple of lectures as well. Can you remember those? Yes. Yes, Ahanya, I actually did not upload the recordings because those guys, other than you, who are coming to lectures, it's you typically, or sometimes Adib and the other guy. But they also tend to not to attend lectures because there are recordings available. So I advise them not to rely on recordings, but I'll be uploading it soon, probably tomorrow or the day after. So articles, yes, your answer is correct. So you call it articles. Are they simple articles? Now, articles can be found in newspapers, magazines. What particular articles you are supposed to read? What particular articles? Hmm? Yes, Sahana. Published by universities. Okay, we call them simply research articles. Research articles. And research articles, welcome Navidu. We were actually referring to something very simple. We were looking at, in university studies, what sort of texts that we were supposed to read. And what I have highlighted here in yellow are the texts that we referred in advanced level and school time. They included school textbooks, tutorials, and books. Yes. But now, when it comes to universities, mostly you are supposed to refer to research articles. Okay. Okay. Now, when it comes to books and textbooks, you have seen that they are organized with facts relevant to your study, your subject alone, and they are organized in such a way that it develops from simple to complex subject matters with exercises and all that. But research articles do have a different order. And today our topic is all about research articles and how these research articles are going to sort of be important in our study. What do you think is the reason for research articles being the central literature or other central sources that we refer in universities? Why? Do you have any answer? Sahana, have you gotten an answer? I'm sure, Sahana, you can remember that we taught you how to do a Google search and how to find articles from Google search and all that. Can you remember that lesson, Pute? Okay. Then why do we refer to research articles is because research articles are actually the very knowledge base which feeds the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics literature. So how it happens? Now we should know how it all happens. Now we call this industry, you and me are now in as knowledge industry. So what is the nature of knowledge industry is they in a knowledge industry, knowledge is the product. Knowledge becomes the product. And when knowledge is produced, knowledge is actually produced through a process called research. It is through research that we create knowledge, and that's why this knowledge industry and research are two very much connected. Now, research creates knowledge, and when you are doing research, we follow something called scientific method. This is something very familiar and something you know. In scientific method, what we are doing is we actually do research on a particular topic by doing a particular order. What is that order? We simply look at what theories in that particular science is available, and then we see how others use theories and do experiments. And when they do experiments, they create knowledge, and that knowledge is published. Knowledge is published, and that publication comes in something called research journals. Yes. And these research journals do have a process called peer review. Can you remember, Sahanya, what is the peer review? Or rather, have you heard this word before? Peer review? Have you heard this word before? Yes. Okay. Peer review means now when you do a research and when you send it to a particular journal, the journal has something called a board of editorial editors. And this board of editors are basically someone, or not someone, people who knows, who studies, and who have become professors of that field in the particular knowledge. Say, for example, you are writing something about astrology. So when you research something in astrology, or rather, let us say chemistry, in the field of chemistry, those people who are highly knowledgeable in the field comes into something called the editorial board. Now, when you do your experiment on chemistry, you write it as a research article, and then you send it to the journal, and journal send it to the editorial board. So editorial board consists editors. They are professors of the field. They read your article and see whether your article is written with the knowledge which is up to date. Up to date in the sense, you can write an article about a knowledge which existed 100 years ago, but those theories are no longer in use right now. They are challenged and new theories came into power. So if your study is based on an old theory which is no longer valid, your research is not going to be published. You know why? It is an outdated study. So that editorial team simply selects the journal articles sent by people around the world like you do, and they read it and find whether they are new knowledge, whether they are up to the standard, and whether they are written using the scientific method, and whether they are actually dealing with the latest and up-to-date theories. Then what happens? When they found that article to be relevant, then they sent the particular article to another professor in the sense, remember that you are writing on chemistry and your chemistry paper is all about analytical chemistry. So that the second process is your article is then sent to a professor in analytical chemistry, so that he knows much better than a general chemistry professor about the subject that you have written. So that the analytical chemistry professor, reads it and give feedback. And when he or she, the analytical professor, gives feedback, he does not know who has written the paper. We call this, therefore, blind peer review. Blind in the sense we don't know who actually has written the paper, and those who have written the paper does not know who actually is going to review the paper. So they are not known to each other. That's why I call it blind peer review. So now what happens is the professor thinks this man knows subject, he wrote it, and it is up to the standard of present knowledge. Or else, if he finds any way that it can be developed into a very advanced, up-to-date article, he gives his suggestions so that the receiver, the writer, gets those feedbacks and he revises his article to address the professor's ideas. And then he resubmit, and once again the process goes on, and finally they are selected, and those selected papers are published. Now what you come to know, Sahanya, is how journal articles come into journal publication. And when it comes to publication, their knowledge, their experiment, their knowledges, their level of contributing of the knowledge is all tested with field experts. This is how research articles come into research journals, and those are the things that you're supposed to read and refer when you are studying literature, when you are studying any science or whatever subject. Is that part clear, Sahanya? Because before we go into what a research article is, we should know how this particular thing comes into exist so that you know how the knowledge industry works. Okay, thank you. You confirmed that you understood it. Can you simply write in 2 sentences the things that you come to know about knowledge industry and research articles? I'm giving you 2 minutes. Take 2 minutes and write in two or couple of sentences. What have you understand? What have you understood as knowledge industry and research paper? Take your time and send me your response in chat. Thank you, Sanya. You have correctly articulated the very idea. Yes. Scientific knowledge. Yes, let me read it because it needs research articles are written to share knowledge and discover new theories. Yes. Reviewing helps to reduce errors and maintain accuracy of the field. Okay, great. You got the point. Now we are going to learn a little bit about how these research articles evolved over time. Couple of centuries ago, rather couple of decades ago, Dasaka Ganakata Kaling, research were done in different places around the world. And when they were doing researches, they were doing their research and they were trying to bring them into the attention of the other researchers of the same field. But when they communicate, say for example, imagine that a researcher in chemistry from Zurich, New Zealand, does his research, and someone from Poland does the same research, or rather does another research on chemistry. Now, the research happens in Poland and research happens in New Zealand did not come to know, the researchers did not come to know about each other and they did not know what they were doing in their corners. So that they wanted to, if it happens to be continued, what happens is now Poland has to do every research from beginning and knowing not what others do about the field. They'll be doing perhaps the research done by Zurich people, the New Zealand, the other people around the world. They may be repeating the same thing, and perhaps they'll be, it's not updated. So they thought of getting people from all over the world into something called forums. And those forums were called symposia, or symposiums, colloquiums, or whatever name it gives. So what happens in these colloquiums and symposiums is that people do their research and annually they join these meetings. They are simply the conferences. In those conferences, they simply present what they did in their laboratories and what their findings are. When they do these presentations, actually at the very beginning, it was very difficult for person A from person A from India to understand person C from New Zealand. What New Zealand guy is doing, and they have to listen to the whole story of research to get to know what he is doing and where and how and all that. So they later thought to make this much more clearer because they knew that if people could do research all around the world separately, but on a same principle with a scientific method, where everyone applies the same method and try it, then they knew that research can move so fast. It can evolve so fast. And the communication between the researchers made the speed of science and articles, the speed they evolve were so fast. The very reason is, now thanks to research articles, in this very fraction of second, there comes thousands of papers from different places around the world who does research on particular paper subjects, and they are published so that anyone from any corner of the world can understand it. Now, remember that person A writes his research paper in a unique way known to person A only. And person B writes the research he does in his own way. And C does in his own way. And when 1,000 papers come in, there are going to be 1,000 different ways that they are written. So it was not easy for people to refer and understand. So they wanted to have established something called crystal clear communication. Crystal clear communication is when person A does research, person B knows what he does, on which field, how he does, and from which theory he is taking his research into account and where he is bringing the theory into and what are the outcomes. So when person A and B writes the paper in a simple format known to commonly both A and B, what happens is each person comes to know what they are talking, what they are doing, what they are researching very easily. That's why research articles came into the present day format with a particular template-like format. So now we are going to see a chapter about this particular thing, right? This is a very simply written chapter. Let me share it with you, and I'm inviting you to read. Can you see my screen, Putha, on yours? I wish you can. Okay. So let us read. Read with me. The canonical structure of the scientific paper. Here we go. Can you silently read it by yourself, Putha, the first passage? I'm sure you have read it. Yes. Can you tell me in your own words? Now it is a challenge for you. Take your keyboard and type in one sentence what you understood by reading the first passage, first paragraph. You are doing two things, Putha. First thing is you are reading. Second thing is you are summarizing. And there's a huge process happens in your brain that is digesting information, processing it, and reproducing it in a way that someone else can understand. Yeah, it's a huge process. Take about 1 minute and try and tell me how you understood this first paragraph. So, Hannah, did I put you in a trouble? Yes, a little trouble, but I know that by putting you in trouble, you are going to learn. That's why I'm putting you in trouble always. Hope you are doing, and I'm waiting for your sentence to come. Navidu, welcome back. Kindly read what you see on screen and try to get the main idea of the paragraph. So, Hannah, is it that difficult? Thank you, Sahanya. I'm reading your write-up. Yes. Modern scientific papers follow the inbred format of introduction, methods, results, and discussion. This format helps scientists to share their work in an understandable way that is not used in the past. Okay. Quite simple, Putha. A research article usually has a way that its data comes in, right? We call this IMRAD, IMRAD structure. What happens in this case is, you know, research article starts with introduction and then it goes to the next section called methods and then results and then discussion and then it follows conclusion and so on, right? Why do they do it in such a way is because they give sections for each writer to include specific information in given specific places. So that IMRAD stands to give where a specific information, say for example, how he did research, what is his experiment, and all that usually comes in method section, right? And if person A does a particular research in a particular method, if you want to find how Mr. A did the research, how he did it, you have to read the method section of the article, right? And if you want to know how his research, what are the results of his research, then it comes under results section. And discussion section is basically about how the knowledge and results he got from his experiment, how he discussed it with the other researchers' work. There can be other people who are doing the same stream of research. So he's going to put his results in the mid of the other results of the research around his time. So this is basically the structure of IMRAD. And let us move to the next half. The evolution of canonical structure is actually a very interesting story. I think people like you should know it. Therefore, I'm reading it for you, right? If you browse 17th and 18th century issues of the Philosophical Transactions is actually a name of a journal. It is about, science research. You'll find that earlier scientific papers held to no discernible conventions of structure, format, or style. These, those papers came in early 18th and 17th century Philosophical Transaction Journal. One paper is different from structure and format to the other. So that paper A came in a particular way, paper B came in another. So they were different from one to the other. There is no common feature in article A, B, C, and D, right? You see, some were written as letters. සමහර research article එකේ තිබ්බේ letters වගේ. Say for example, starting dear researchers, right? I'm writing from Canterbury about research on how chemical elements are formulated under certain circumstances, right? So some were written in essay formats, like, this research done in Canterbury did this and that and so on. Someone else wrote it in such a standard way, like, such a complex way, where he draws a diagram and goes on explaining what he did in a diagrammatical way. So papers were in different formats, right? Okay. Some papers had, section headings, some did not have. So what happens? So when they refer to someone else's study, they usually come in margins, in corners or footnotes. So remember that person A is referring to Darwin's research. But when he makes the reference, he simply say Darwin said, or rather the description about Darwin comes in a corner margin of a paper. So they were hilariously different from one to the other. So what happens? They were really entertaining stories, but it took a lot of time for researchers to understand and get an idea about these researchers. So then what they did? I'm reading this part. In the 1830s and 1840s, an organizational style including elements we now recognize as introduction, methods, results, and discussion became common, especially in German chemistry papers, although these were not necessarily separated and labeled as sections. ඔන්න බලන්න earliest inbred structure එක මතුවෙන හැටි. 1830 40 විතර ජර්මනි chemistry papers වල තමයි මතුවෙන්නේ. මේක වාර්තා කරන්නේ අපිට හර්මන් ඇන්ඩ් ග්‍රොස් කියන රචකයෝ දෙන 2007 මේ අද ක්‍රමයට බලකිනවා reference එක. Yes. මේ chemistry papers වල තිබුණා introduction, methods, results and discussion කියලා. ඒ වුණාට ඒවා title කරලා තිබ්බේ නැහැ, subtitle කරලා තිබ්බේ නැහැ, introduction and so on, right? Methodology section were particularly important. Highlighted Louis Pasha and people, they were very much keen about methodology because it has to prove that they are doing research in a scientific way. Well, I'm coming to something else. Shall we read this? The canonical structure we now use evolved to allow efficient access by readers to the content of a scientific paper. Our familiar conventions work as finding systems. That is, finding systems is a word used by Gross and others in their paper in 2002, in which the writers meet well-defined reader expectations. Someone wanting to know how an experiment was done can proceed directly to the method section. So how the experiment is done, come to method section. Someone wanting to summary of the research questions can look at the end of the introduction. Now, if one wants to know the summary of the research, it usually comes in the end of the introduction. And someone wanted to know why the results are important, they have to go and see the discussion, right? In this way, IMRAD structure came into place, establishing in the scientific industry, knowledge industry, a common way that everyone can communicate in one way. On the other way, everyone can understand scientific narratives. So that is what we call IMRAD structure. And what you can see now on screen is, in this particular IMRAD structure, this tells what a scientific paper looks like, right? There is something called front matter. They call it front matter. In the front matter, you will see the title of the paper, right? And then just below the title, you see byline and author affiliations. Now, which researcher did which research, right? And then comes keywords, word count, and other details. Now, I'm going to show you the front matter of a real article, right? Here we come. What you see here on your screen is a research article. You see? So this tells the journal name, and then it tells research article, because journals usually bring several types of articles, like, research article, literature review articles, then concept papers, and so much. This is basically the front matter. You see, this highlighted area is called front matter. In the front matter, what appears is, you see the article name, right? And then who wrote it. You see, these are the names of the authors. And then each article writer belongs to some place. You see, Mohammed Rashidul Hassan, he is from Electrical and Computer Engineering, University of Nebraska, Lincoln, United States of America. Right? Then Bilal Khan, he is from Department of Community and Population Health, once again, United States of America. And there gives the affiliation with the email address. Now, this part is called the front matter, or rather, the very first thing that you see in a research article, right? So let me move on to the front matter here. Yes. Then comes something called abstract. Can you see? And I'm taking you to the abstract here in the example paper. You see the abstract. Here is the abstract. What do you call is an abstract these days? Now, these days, lots of researchers coming in. Therefore, people find, if you are doing a research in a particular field, you have to find lots of papers coming overnight. And it is not easy for someone to read all the papers. So when you're reading on research articles, you can finish reading one article and go to the next article, and it is a waste of time. Therefore, they decided to bring something called a very simple summary of the entire journal article, entire research, once again summarized under IMRAD structure. It gives an introduction and it gives summary of the methods. It gives summary of the results and discussion. Here you see this article is about AI-based intervention for improving undergraduate STEM learning. And here is the abstract. I'm inviting you guys to read with me. Read with me. Abstract. We present results from a small scale randomized control trial that evaluates the impact of just-in-time interventions on the academic outcomes of N65 undergraduate students in a STEM course. Can anyone tell what is N65 means? This is research. This is research secrets. Can you make a guess what this N stands for? Navedu, do you have any idea? Sahanya, have you got any idea what this N means? If you don't have an idea, just say no, darling.
I have no idea.
Right, thank you, Navedu. Sahanya, what about you? Okay. Now, N stands for something called when you're doing an experiment. Now, this is a research done with people, right? Because it involves undergraduates. So it's a sort of a study done among undergraduates to see how undergraduates writing, yeah, how AI use academic outcomes. For this research, they have chosen 65 undergraduate students from a STEM course. Now see, N is a popular term in any research. N stands for population size. तर population එකේ ඒකේ පර්යේෂණයට භාජනය කළේ 65 දෙනෙක් නම් N equals 65. Right? Okay. N කියලා කියන්නේ අතන පර්යේෂණයට භාජනය වෙච්චි ගහණය. එහෙම නැත්නම් sample එක. Okay, read with me. In a STEM course, intervention messaging content was based on machine learning forecasting model data collected from 537 students in the same course over the preceding 3 years. Trial results show that interventions produced a statistically significant increase in the proportion of students that achieved a passing grade. The outcomes point to the potential and promise of just-in-time interventions for STEM and the need for larger, fully powered randomized control trials. Now you see, this whole thing says what this researcher did, and how they did it, and what is their results. So it is basically IMR and D, a summary. So this is how the front matter stands. Let me go back to the canonical structure. ඇයි මේකට canonical structure කියන්නේ කියන එකට ඔයාලට හේතුව තේරෙයි. It is because a research paper brings information into the research paper. When the information is taken, how narrow and broad these information is indicated by these lines. You can see it is like a cannon. Right? අර hourglass එකක් කියලා කියන්නේ අපි අර මොනවාද හෝරා මොකද්ද හෝරාමනුව පාවිච්චි කරනවා නේද? අර එක පැත්තකට මොකද ඒක සිංහලෙන් කියන්නේ? එක පැත්තක වැලි වැලි ඔරලෝසුව කියලා අපි කියන්නේ. එක පැත්තක වැලි පුරවලා හෙමිසරේක වැටෙනවා අනිත් පැත්තට. right? ඔයාලට පේනවා එකේ උඩයි යටයි දෙපැත්තෙම අවකාශය විශාලයි. නමුත් මැද බෝතල් කර වගේ ප්‍රමාණය අවකාශය සීමිතයි. මෙන්න මේ විදිහට තමයි පුතේ information flow වෙන්නේ scientific research paper එක. කොහොමද flow වෙන්නේ? In the introduction area, you see he is talking about a wider, bigger area of research. And then he narrows it down, and then comes to talk about the very research he does. And from after giving his results, he once again brought this research into bigger picture. So starting from a big picture, narrowing it down to the small research you did, and then go back to the big picture. That's why this is called canonical structure, right? So you see, if you look at the canonical structure, in the very wider place starts the introduction. And when it comes to narrowing, you see method section narrows and result section is the most narrowed area, right? Once again, when it comes to discussion and all that, this becomes broadening once again, right? And like the front matter we discussed, there is a back matter as well. In the back matter, in the research paper, they talk about who helped them in research. It was what references they cited, any other appendices and all that, right? Well, I'm inviting you to read this half of the article. Read with me. You will understand it easy. Read with me, please. The canon, IMR radio structure and the hourglass. The family Imrad structure, අපි උඩ දැකපු figure එක, is actually a bit more complicated than its acronym for three reasons. First, the four major sections are the core of the paper but are surrounded by the other elements. The core sections are always preceded by front matter. අපි ඔය කියපු introduction, method, research, results and discussion කියන එකට කලින් තමයි front matter එක එන්නේ. Yes. And usually by an abstract. They are always followed by some back matter. අර Imrad structure එකෙන් පස්සේ ආයෙ තියෙන back matter එකේ which comes acknowledgement, reference and appendices and so on. Yes. Second, each of the four major sections also has some standardized substructure. Third, there is some minor variation. Yes. Let me bring your attention to this central paragraph. Read it with me. Imrad core has an important property illustrated by the hourglass shape in figure 8.1. A well-written paper follows a predictable change in focus. Broad attention to the work's context in a major field at the beginning of the introduction. So introduction is a broader concept. Narrower definition of the central research questions at the introduction's end. Introduction ඉවර වෙනකොට we come into sort of a narrow end. And narrowest focus on specific techniques and results at the hourglass middle, the methods and results. Methods, results වලට දෙක මේ narrow වෙලා කතා කරන්නේ research එකේ කරපු දේ විතරයි. Right? And towards the discussion, it once again begins to broad. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ research එකේ කාරණය සම්බන්ධ කරන අනික් research එක පුළුල් අවකාශයක. So this very nature is something very common in Imrad structure, right? So I'm inviting you to write down this chapter summary, which has only 3 bullet points. You can either take what we call screenshot of this, or else you can write it down. What the chapter summary says. Yeah. The Imrad structure is now standard for most scientific papers and includes abstract, introduction, methods, results, and discussion. Imrad Kilagan, AIMRAD. Imrad functions as finding system for readers, following efficient access to content. Finding system can make a key එකක් වගේ. You know where the methods comes, where the results comes, where the discussion comes, right? A well-organized paper will have hourglass structure with focus broad at the beginning, narrowing through the introduction and widening again through the discussion. So it's about the discussion, how it is starting with the broader and then come to the research and narrowed and narrow ends at the discussion, making it once again broader, right? So this is what I wanted you to know in today's discussion, right? Well, with that, I'm taking you to a simple uh, quiz. Are you ready to answer my quiz? If you're ready, just give me a thumbs up. You can open a new tab in your screen and you can join this quiz quite simply. Go to the tab given there, joinmyquiz.com, and then enter the game code 615170. Once you entered, I can start. If you have a mobile phone, in addition to your computer, you can do this even in mobile phone. So you just type joinmyquiz.com and then there will be a place where you can enter the game code, join code 615170. When you enter it, I will see you appear here. Please try and log in. Sahanya is in. Can I hear Navidu also, please? Navidu, please join. Navidu, if you are using the same device, you can open a new tab, or else you can simply uh, move away from the Zoom and simply get into the phone. But if you join the game, I know that you are in, like Sahanya is now in. You know what to do. Quite simply, Sahanya will wait Navidu to join, or else we can start, right? Okay, Sahanya, until Navidu joins, we can go ahead. Start answering. Okay, let's go to the next question. Sahanya, what is the question? Explain the overall outcome of the study results and specific area and implications. Where should it come? It should come in, yeah, yes, in results. Okay, go to the next. Background information to the study and your reason why you are doing that research. Where do you think it might come? It should come in the introduction. You must have chosen it somewhere else. Okay, don't worry about it. Details outcomes of the study in a natural order. Outcomes. Okay, we'll go further. Rationale. Why do you do the research? That's rationale. Where do you think it comes? Okay, no worries. We'll go to the next question. Rationale means where the reason for doing that research comes. That usually comes in introduction. Measurement tools. Measurement tools. How you measure certain things? Where should it be coming? How you measure temperature in an experiment on temperature? Well, you got it. That comes in methods. Okay, go to the next. Have you heard something called literature review? Literature review is all about other researchers that you read about this particular area of study. Where should it come? You seem to have made a wrong guess. It usually comes in introduction. Yes, introduction aspect. Okay, go to the next. Limitations of the study, where it comes. This study limits to, yes. Okay. Go to the next question. Where should statistical analysis comes? Analysis usually comes in results and discussion. Yeah. Research question. Where do you think research question may come? You made a mistake. It should come in introduction. Okay. And in methods as well. Yeah. Recommendations for future research. Where it comes. After doing your research, you recommend certain things. If these things be done, the research will be much better in future. That usually comes in the discussion sector. Okay, let's go to the last question. Research design. How you design the research? Where it comes? It's easy. It's easy, but you made a wrong judgment. It comes in methods. Your research design usually comes in methods. Well, don't worry about the marks you got from this Sahanya, right? Because we, for the first time, come to know today what an IMRAD structure is and where it comes in, and you know how a research paper is organized. So let us look at in a real STEM paper how this uh, parts IMRAD appears, right? So you see abstract, the front matter, and then comes introduction. Now you see in the introduction, this guy is talking about, right? And before it comes to materials and methods, methods is here, but before the methods, see what is the last half of the introduction, right? Okay, let me read. This article presents an ML-based method for providing just-in-time interventions among undergraduate STEM students and evaluate its efficacy via small randomized control trial. You see, bit of a summary of the result is given towards the end of the introduction. And then comes materials and methods. Materials and methods is another name for methods. So it is basically methods. So who the study cohort, and then how it all happened, intervention group, control group, predictive machine learning models, all those things appear, how it is measured, right? All those things actually are part of the methods section, right? And after the methods section, there comes results. IMR are results, you see? And then comes the discussion. So usually, every research paper comes with these subheadings and then conclusions. And you see final work. And there comes then the most important part, the back matter, which includes references. Well, I'll be sharing this article on your Moodle page. And once I share it, you'll be able to read this whole thing in detail. I'll be sharing both the chapter we read here and there from that book, and of course, then this research article. Now, Sahanya, this week I'll be setting on Friday night another quiz. And this quiz is going to be once again contributing to your final assessment. This is going to be about IMRAD structure, right? So I'm inviting you to go to internet, find research, find articles, and see how articles simply organize their structure, right? And that is one thing. The second thing is see where comes which information, right? You can find it with ChatGPT or Notebook LMS or Gemini or any of the AI devices that we taught you. From those, try and learn IMRAD structure. If you have understood something from today's lecture, Sahanya, before I wind up, it is now time for you to tell me what you studied today, and is it helpful for you to read effectively any research paper that you might read in your university life? Just give me your comment on chat, and then we can say goodbye for the day. Okay. Now, I'm inviting Sahanya for you to read. In our next sessions, we'll be inviting you to read from journal articles. We'll be doing this practice. Where, what information can we find? We'll do it in coming weeks. Saturday, Sahanya will be going for nearly 2+ hours because we want to actually bring this to an end by next month, somewhere towards, in about 4 weeks' time. 4 weeks' time, yes, we are going to conclude your group of people's teaching. Therefore, we will be taking Wednesday 1.5 or 1 and 15 minutes, and on Saturday nearly 2+ hours by me and Ashwini madam separately, right? So this is procedure for future. I'll try my best to upload all the recordings by Friday so that those who have missed, particularly Navidu, happen to come and go. So he might be missing things. For their use, I'll be uploading them. So Sanya, shall I say good night for today?